In October 2023, a submarine cable linking Estonia to Finland was cut on the floor of the Baltic Sea. In November 2024, two cables crossing the same sea were damaged days apart, one connecting Sweden to Lithuania, another linking Germany to Finland. In February 2025, another cable in the Baltic, then one in the Mediterranean, then one in the South China Sea. 11 submarine cables damaged or cut in 18 months. Different oceans, different continents. With one common thread in pretty much every case: Chinese flag vessels spotted near the cut within hours of the incident. Coincidence? American admirals don't buy it. European intelligence services don't buy it. And once you get what these cables do and what happens when they go, you won't either. Welcome to the quietest war of the 21st century. It's being fought right now, 4,000 meters below the ocean's surface, and most people have no idea it even exists. You probably picture the internet running on satellites. Most people do. The reality is completely different and a lot more fragile. 95% of all international data traffic travels on submarine cables, not satellites. Cables, fiber optic lines laid on the seabed in places more than 8,000 meters down, hooking every continent to every other. There are roughly 400 active cables worldwide with over 1.3 million kilometers of total length, enough to wrap around Earth 32 times. Each cable is about the thickness of a garden hose, and inside those tubes rides absolutely everything: text messages, phone calls, Wall Street financial traffic, encrypted military comms, intelligence data, and the $10 trillion in international banking transactions processed every day. When an American bank wires money to Europe, the signal goes by submarine cable. When the NSA pulls intelligence from European partners, it goes by submarine cable. When the Department of Defense talks to US bases in the Pacific, a huge share of that goes by submarine cable. Cutting the right cable at the right moment can be more devastating than any bomb. Here's what makes the recent incidents different from normal accidents. Submarine cables get damaged by accident all the time: merchant anchors, earthquakes, seabed erosion. The industry logs 150 to 200 incidents a year globally. That's expected. It's baked in. There are specialty insurers for it. What isn't normal is the geographic and strategic pattern of what's been happening lately. The cables that got cut aren't random low-traffic lines. They're systematically high strategic value, the ones tying NATO members together, the ones carrying allied military traffic for the US, the ones linking strategically important islands to the rest of the world. In the Baltic case, two of the cables cut in November 2024 were used by NATO members for regional defense communications. The second piece of the pattern is where the cuts happened. In several incidents, the cables were severed in deep water, not in shallow zones where anchor accidents are common, but at 100 to 200 meters of depth, where a ship would need to drag an anchor with deliberate, directed force to reach the cable on the bottom. The third piece is the ships. In at least 7 of the 11 incidents, AIS tracking, the maritime GPS every commercial vessel is required to broadcast, flagged Chinese flagships or vessels traceable to Chinese companies near the cut site in the 12 hours before the incident. In some cases, those ships went dark. AIS transponders switched off right in the incident window. Killing AIS on the open ocean is illegal and wildly unusual for legitimate commercial traffic. For ops that don't want a paper trail, it's SOP. The centerpiece of this playbook isn't a military submarine. It isn't a warship. It's something far harder to intercept or confront diplomatically: civilian survey, dredging, and cable maintenance ships under opaque ownership. China runs the world's largest fleet of ocean research vessels, more than 50 hulls classified as scientific or survey ships. Many are documented dual use, legit research on normal ops, plus deep ocean work that includes ROVs, remotely operated vehicles, rated down to 6,000 meters. The hull most often tied to Baltic incidents is the Weipeng-3 TAS, a Chinese-flagged deep-ocean research ship. After the November 2024 cable cuts, the Weipeng-3 sat at anchor in the Kattegat, the strait between Denmark and Sweden, for over 50 days, turning down inspection requests from Danish and Swedish authorities. Beijing claimed the ship was on legitimate business. No inspection was allowed. 50 days at anchor, refusing inspection after 2 cables went down. In international waters where the legal right to board is fuzzy enough that China could say no without instant blowback. That legal fuzz isn't an accident. It's built into the operation. So how do you actually cut a cable 200 meters down without leaving obvious sabotage fingerprints? The technique you see most often, and the hardest to tell apart from a genuine accident, is deliberate anchor dragging. A ship parks over the cable route, which is public info on international charts, drops a heavy anchor and creeps forward, using the hull's weight and motion to drag the anchor along the bottom until it snags and snaps the cable. It looks like a navigation screw-up. Proving intent is basically impossible without access to the ship, voyage data, and onboard cameras, all of which sit with the operator. The second technique uses ROVs, remotely operated subs, that can slip quietly off a research hull and run autonomously to the cable. Some models carry mechanical cutters or even small charges sized to look like pressure failure or corrosion. Forensics on an ROV cut can come back inconclusive if the job was clean enough. What cable repair engineers reported across multiple recent incidents is telling. The damage doesn't match typical anchor strikes, the cut angle, the lack of drag scars on the adjacent seabed, and in some cases the surgical precision of the break, right on a splice between cable segments where fixes are slowest and costliest. Everything we've laid out so far, the Baltic pattern, the ghost ships, the cutting techniques, is a rehearsal for the scenario that keeps American strategists up at night. Taiwan depends on 14 submarine cables for international connectivity, 14 strands tying an island of 23 million people to the rest of the world, to global finance, to military comms with the United States, to intelligence networks that would matter on day one of any fight. In 2023, 2 cables to the Matsu Islands, a Taiwanese archipelago just off China's coast, were cut days apart. The islands ran on severely throttled international links for weeks. The probe concluded Chinese ships were in the area. Nobody got punished. It was a test, and it worked like a charm. Pentagon planners spelled it out in declassified reporting. On day 0 of any Chinese move against Taiwan, before a missile flies or a warship makes a visible move, all 14 of Taiwan's submarine cables could go in one coordinated cut. Within hours, Taiwan could be comms isolated. No international internet, no banking rails, no secure military links to Washington. In a blockade scenario, Taiwan without comms is Taiwan blind, deaf, and unable to coordinate with allies. And the ships that did the cutting would already be gone, AIS dark, before any response could even spin up. And here's what drives Western governments nuts. Even when everyone knows what happened, proving it legally and punishing it diplomatically is brutally hard. The law of the sea was built for a pre-hybrid war world. It treats damage to submarine cables mainly as a civil matter, spats between cable operators and careless mariners, not as acts of war or state sabotage. To trigger coordinated sanctions or Security Council action, you need intent. And proving intent when the actor is a civilian hull claiming a nav accident in international waters with no witnesses hits an evidentiary bar Beijing has bet Western allies can't clear on a steady basis. China holds a permanent seat on the UN Security Council with veto power over any resolution that points the finger. Coordinated economic sanctions need consensus among allies with wildly different levels of economic dependence on Beijing. So after each incident, you get investigations, diplomatic statements, emergency NATO huddles, and basically zero concrete consequences for China. Western governments aren't totally out of moves. The catch is the moves on the table are defensive, slow, and expensive, while the hits are offensive, fast, and cheap. In 2024, NATO stood up the Maritime Centre for the Security of Critical Undersea Infrastructure, a hub dedicated to monitoring and protecting cables and undersea pipelines. The US has stepped up submarine patrols on critical cable routes in the Pacific. Several allies are developing seabed sensor nets to catch disturbances near high-value lines, but guarding 1.3 million kilometers of cable strung across every ocean is mathematically impossible to do exhaustively. You can't post a guard under every meter of fiber. The takeaway US security analysts keep circling is uncomfortable. China doesn't have to cut every cable. It only has to cut enough, at critical enough moments, to show it can freeze Western comms whenever it wants, creating the same deterrent effect nuclear arsenals did in the 20th century. A weapon doesn't have to be fired at full power to work. The cable war isn't on the horizon. It's already started. It's happening now in silence, thousands of meters down, and so far, the scoreboard tilts hard toward Beijing.